Welcome back to the Angler Journey podcast for another episode of celebrating success, embracing failure, and inspiring the entrepreneur inside of you. I'm your host, Emily Frenzen, and this morning I have the pleasure of sitting down with Miranda, the founder of Made by Miranda. Made stands for Making All Days Efficient, and we are here to talk about how she does that. Although she is a student who is passionate about entrepreneurial education, specifically through agricultural education, Miranda is also a business owner. So Miranda, go ahead and give us a little bit about your background, where you're from, and how you got started.
Yeah, sure. So I'm Miranda Horning. I'm originally from Davie, Nebraska, so just north of Lincoln. I'm a senior agriculture education major here at UNL, and I've been part of Angler for the past 4 years.
Awesome. Good stuff. So tell us what your business is and how you got started.
Sure. So my business is called Made, M-A-D-E, by Miranda, which stands for Making All Days Efficient. So basically what I do is I go in and I organize people's homes, businesses, and home offices, is the general gist of that.
Good stuff. So we launched the Angler Fellowship this summer, and you were in the first cohort of those students. So tell us what the fellowship was and how that was valuable for you to start your business.
Sure. So when I entered the fellowship, I actually had a different business idea. I started off working on something educational. That was the pathway I saw my future in. So I said, I must do a business with that. And 2 weeks into the fellowship, in the in-depth training and the weekly phone calls, literally 2 weeks in, I was like, this is such a fail. I definitely need to quit. So I did, but I didn't have another idea.
Yeah.
But I was already in the fellowship program for the whole summer, and I didn't take an internship and instead did the program. So I knew I had to come up with something.
Yeah.
And Brennan was very encouraging. He said, just take a few days. It's okay. And so during that time, I started a new show on Netflix. Some people might have heard of it. It's called The Home Edit.
Oh, yeah.
And it's the professional organizers from California that organize celebrity homes. And I was so fascinated by what they did. I've always been a very organized and detailed person. Mm-hmm. And so one night I'm sitting here watching it with my roommates, and I looked at them and I said, wait a minute, why can't I do that? I could do that here. I didn't have any idea what that looked like at the time, but I took that idea to my fellowship participants and kind of bounced it off them, and they were like, that's something super unique.
Goodness.
I've never even heard of that.
Right.
So that's how the idea came to be. And then from there, I just basically started the process from ground up of research, started looking into people in the Lincoln area, Omaha area that do this. And there's not really a ton of people that do this solely just organizing. A lot of people clean or move, but no one just organizes. So I thought, this is kind of like the niche market I want to work with. And so I set up a couple trial runs, having no clue what I was doing and just thinking, I might be good at it.
Yeah.
And so luckily through those trial runs, I kind of learned some good things to do and some, this is not working. I learned how to purchase inventory of, baskets, bins, organizers, all the things. I've been working through that. Had to figure out a pricing structure. That was huge for me. Big fail in the beginning. I set it way too low and then it was too high. And so now we found that middle ground. But through all of that, the fellowship was a major part of helping me work through that. Each week we have a phone call and bounce ideas off of each other. And when I had a question about, how do I charge for my time when I travel somewhere for a job outside of Lincoln, someone else in the fellowship had done that and worked through that problem and was able to give me insight on what a possible solution was to that and what I could do. So that was very helpful to hear from other people early on and get through those, kinks and mistakes really quickly and move forward. So that was crucial for me.
Totally. So a little background, Angler gives students $5,000, invests the $5,000 in students with a business or business idea. And that was application based. So you had to submit an application to get into this with, how many of you were there? 5 students?
Yeah, there
total?
was 5.
Okay, awesome. And in that, what was your original idea and how was it failing? I want to hear a little bit more about the failure.
Yes.
We love to embrace the failure.
So a little bit over a year ago, exactly from today, I had an idea that I was working on for educational subscription boxes. It was something that I had always kind of had in the back of my head, and I was like, okay, I'm gonna actually try to work on it. So basically my idea was that I would create activities for a certain age range of kids and put them in a box, and every month would get delivered to your door for your kid.
So cool.
And as they moved up in age, so did their boxes, and their content areas would get harder, things like that. And I came to find out through research. So I hit the fellowship, and this was all just in my head. And the first thing I had to do was research. And as I began to research, I found another company, huge company, that's literally doing this exact thing.
Oh, yeah.
And honestly, one of the big reasons it came down to me wanting to pivot away from it was their cost. Since they had been doing it for so long, their cost was so low, and I would have had to charge way more than that.
Right.
And that wasn't my goal with it, was to have to charge a lot to my customers. Like, I really wanted to do this to serve young families that needed something different than an iPad or technology to give their kids. Through that, I kind of realized that was not going to work when there was another option that was much more affordable and honestly much more well put together than what I had. So
yeah. What do you love about Made by Miranda?
Yeah. I really like that I can go into someone's home and serve them inside of their home. I've enjoyed doing a little bit in the business sector, and that's always fun to impact, kind of the culture in an office and those types of things. But my favorite part is when I get to go into someone's home and, reorganize their pantry that they open and look at every day, that their kids get snacks out of every day. Like, it's something that I impact their everyday lives. And I just find a lot of good energy from that, and just a great way for me to feel like I'm serving people in that capacity.
For sure. So in the clients that you've worked with, who do you find is your customer who is so thankful for this and gets it and is like, wow, I needed this in my life?
Yes.
Who are you serving?
I found kind of two kind of buckets with that.
Yeah.
One are really busy families. That was kind of my target audience going in, was like those busy families that, they just don't have time to go through all of this and organize and make everything, but it would make their lives so much easier and their kids' lives so much easier. So I've really enjoyed working with that demographic, but also I found kind of the elderly population, which I didn't expect that to be a thing. But I found it like quite a big population that's the people that really desire it. And they think, oh, I'm older now, I can't do all this, get up on this step stool and do all these things. And so they love it when I can come in and they can just watch. And so that's been a really neat process to see. Yeah,
that is so cool. And I think all of your story is so inspirational in how it is a journey and a process, knowing that you started this short summer experience because the fellowship is only in a summer, and you came up with a totally different idea, but in that had so much discovery with who you're serving and pricing, and learned so much in a short amount of time, which is so cool to think about what happens when we say yes to giving our time to the ideas or the entrepreneurial pursuits. So I just want to affirm you on that and say that it's so worth the time, and to anyone listening to know that it is worth the investment, even for discovery, because that you tried the first idea and you're like, okay, that wasn't it, but you tried it. Yeah, absolutely. So awesome. Super cool. So I want to talk a little bit about what COVID was like for you, and just acknowledge you being a student and being an entrepreneur, like so many titles, because I know you're heavily involved in campus and abroad. But what was it like when UNL said, we're not coming back to campus in March of 2020? What did you do? How did you feel? I'm a firm believer that every single student remembers where they were that day when that email came out. I know for me, I was sitting on city campus in multicultural education class, and the entire classroom just gasped at the same time, because we all had our laptops open taking a quiz. So we probably shouldn't have been checking our emails, but it was a shock. We couldn't believe that it had come to that. We'd been hearing it on the news for a little bit, but the fact that email was actually sent saying, hey, you have one more day of classes, and then like you're going home. Like there's nothing else, this is it. So for me in that time period, my dad was actually moving in the process of moving. And so I just stayed in Lincoln in my apartment. And so I shared an apartment with two other girls, but they both went home. So it was just me in my apartment. Which I think we all thought was going to last during the 2 weeks of quarantine. That they said, if we quarantine for 2 weeks, it'll go away. And so I definitely had that mindset of like, oh, 2 weeks to myself in the apartment. Like, yes, I'm going to like binge watch these shows and, get caught up on laundry. And then the 2 weeks went by, and it was still going on, and it was turning into, 2 weeks turned into a month, and then a month turned into the entire summer. And eventually my roommates did come back after a few months, but there was a solid 2 or 3 months I was sitting by myself in the apartment. So it was a very big adjustment. Absolutely. What did that feel like in all of that?
Like I said, at first it was kind of exciting, just like, oh, I get a really nice break, and we got an extended spring break. It was awesome.
Right.
Like, I was living it up, doing puzzles and movies, and no, but then after, the couple weeks went by, it was like, okay, am I supposed to be doing something? I felt like what am I supposed to do? I don't feel like anyone really knew. Like, should I be just like going about my everyday life? I mean, classes picked back up online, so I had that going on, but felt very just kind of like lost out at sea, like just on a sailboat with, just floating around. There was no really direction of what was supposed to be going on. And so I felt that really deeply. Yeah,
absolutely. How do you see COVID being so timely for your business to start and for other entrepreneurs, as well?
Yeah. So a year into COVID, and I'm trying to start a business where I'm going into people's houses. I didn't think about it at first, but when I set up my first trial run, I thought to myself, oh my gosh, like, wait a minute. Should I be wearing, a mask? Should I be wearing gloves? Should I be like all these precautions I hadn't even thought about in the midst of this pandemic? That like, I'm just going to go into people's houses. Like, it wasn't something I had thought about at first. So, that was definitely a major concern of mine of like, how is this going to affect my business? But I think it was the most timely thing that I was willing to go into people's houses, because I remember specifically one of the first people I did an official project for, like fully paid. They had a few young children, and I remember thinking to myself on the way there, like, okay, like I just need to keep distance. Like I had asked them, what precautions do you want me to take? But I was like, I just need to keep distance and it'll be fine. And by the time I went to leave, she was like, you are one of the only people my kids have seen in like a year, because she had homeschooled them, and they weren't out in the world. They lived out in the country, like not near anyone. Oh my goodness. And she was like, you are one of the few people like that we've seen, because most people aren't willing to drive out here and with all the precautions to take. So that was a pivoting moment for me that like really affirmed that I was doing something that was making a difference. Even just showing up to someone's house, I didn't realize that could impact too.
Totally. Wow.
Yeah.
I want to hear a little bit more about stories of you working with clients. What do they tell you after you're done doing the home makeover? And what are some examples of how you've seen this be fruitful and have success?
Yeah, totally. So one person that I've done a few different organizing projects for, she's a sweetheart. She, the first project I did for her was her medicine cabinet. And she had a big, kind of bin of medicine that she takes every day, that she needs to take every day. And like, that needed to be very labeled and organized for her. So that was a priority. So after doing that, I showed her, and it's always nerve-wracking the first time I do it for someone, because I never know what that reaction's going to be. Is this what they expected? Is it not? I can show them pictures of things I've done, but each project is so different that it won't be the same. And so I remember bringing her around the corner, and I was like, okay, here's everything. And I like to go through and explain, each bin, and here's the label, and here's why things are where they are, because no one person organizes the same. So I walked her through it, and she just kind of stood there. And then at the end, she was like, I love this. This is going to make my day-to-day so much easier. And just hearing her say like day-to-day really made an impact on me, because it's something that I didn't intend on. I didn't, going in there being like, oh, I'm going to organize your hall closet with medicine. Like, I didn't think that had much to do with that day-to-day life. So hearing comments like that, hearing especially kids, I've heard a few kids say like, when I've organized pantries and they open them and all the kids' snacks are down low, they can grab them, and they just feel like that independence and freedom. And they're like, look, Mom, I can do this for myself.
That's so awesome.
And all those little comments just like really, really keep me going and make me remember why I'm doing what I'm doing.
Absolutely. Yeah. So on that note, I want to go a little bit deeper into the why of what you're doing. So let's hear the why behind Made by Miranda, and also your why for entrepreneurship, because I know that entrepreneurship has a very unique definition for you, knowing that you're an ag teacher who has been actively involved in offering different kind of educational resources for teachers across Nebraska for our program as we've started to open that door and provide resources for people. I would just love to hear your why for entrepreneurship and how you see it in the classroom and in your own business. So it's something that over the past semester has changed a little bit, and I'm definitely very open about it. I made a really big realization over the semester that entrepreneurship to me looks very different than the traditional entrepreneur.
in a good example, you know, I think about my older brother who runs a company every single day. Like it's his full-time thing. He has employees. Like to him, that's a very traditional sense of an entrepreneur.
Right.
But that's not me.
Yeah.
And through actually getting a business off the ground and running it a little bit, I think I've realized that.
Yeah.
So specifically to Made, I would say kind of the theme of all of this has been service and getting to serve people every day in some sort of helpful capacity.
Yeah.
And so that's definitely the major driving point for that is why I do it. And that kind of translates to my overall why of entrepreneurship too. When I think about my future and going to be a teacher and what that looks like for me down the road, it's very much service to students and service to the educator community as a whole, but just in an untraditional way. It's not just going back to a classroom as I saw myself, you know, coming into college, like, oh, I'm just going to go back and teach every day and like go through the motions.
Yes.
It's going to be much more proactive than I ever could have imagined.
Yeah.
It's going to be much more untraditional and, you know, we'll see maybe unacademic as it can be, to really promote other people to thinking outside the box and thinking, you know, there is something bigger than just this in a box thinking that we have in the education system. So for me, it's really all about giving service to students and to educators and to other people in my business. And down the road, that could change a lot, you know, what that specifically looks like for me. But I think as long as I keep that kind of focus, that's kind of my guiding point.
Totally. Do you have an example or two of what that would look like to take entrepreneurship into the classroom? Yeah,
for sure. So one of the favorite things that I've been able to do this semester is help with the launch program. So that's in conjunction between the FFA Foundation and Association and then Angler. So we're able to provide some content and sponsorship to high school entrepreneurs who start businesses in their ag programs. So I've been able to help kind of facilitate some of that content this year and see the businesses get up off the ground and running. We have one that a school that's making beef jerky out of their school and they're selling it as a school snack. That's so cool. It's something that I never thought of before, like at all, when I thought, I want to be a teacher, that I could help students run a business inside of the school.
Totally.
So that's probably something that as I get out and I get my own classroom and things like that, like a school-based enterprise would be something that I'm very intrigued about because I just think there's a big potential for learning in that.
Totally. And what made you want to be a teacher in the first place?
Yeah. So I always knew I wanted to be a teacher. I think the only time I've ever written down I didn't was in like kindergarten when I said I wanted to be a ballerina. Like,
oh my gosh, that's awesome.
Which I had no dance experience, so I had no business saying that.
That is so funny.
No, I've just always known that teacher esque is something like in that realm that I wanted to do. My mom was a teacher. She was an elementary special ed teacher. So just seeing her every day, she taught in the afternoons at our elementary school. And so every day, you know, school would get out and we'd run down to mom's room. And it was just a life that I knew I was going to enjoy. But I never knew what specifically I wanted to teach. Never through elementary school. I never really had an idea. I was just like, I'm just gonna be a teacher.
Yeah.
And then I got to about 6th grade and I was like, well, I'm a pretty good writer, like maybe English, like, I don't know. And then I love to tell people day one of 7th grade year, first day of intro to ag class, 7th grade year, I said, this is what I want to do. And I like literally remember telling my ag teacher, hey, I want your job. So something clicked with me with ag. I didn't grow up on a production ag operation at all. I was a town kid. But my brothers were involved in FFA and so were my parents. And by the time it came, you know, I was able to be old enough to take an ag class. It just clicked. It was the most perfect fit. So yeah.
And here you are.
And here I am.
Yeah. That is so awesome. Yeah. So to close us out, I have 2 final questions. Yeah. One, if you were to fill in the blank, the pandemic taught me blank, what would you say?
I would say the pandemic taught me both that it's okay to take a break. I took a nice long break when I was sent home. And I found some enjoyment in that waiting period of not knowing what was going on.
Right.
I got to do things that really filled my cup up. And so that break of waiting is okay. There is a good time to rest. But I would say the pandemic also taught me, after that period kind of rounds out, that it's time to get the fire started back up and get to work and, you know, get to the grind. There's a really integral point where that switch needs to happen. And so I really saw that through the pandemic in myself and in a lot of other people as well.
Totally. And you lived it out. So that's cool to see. So lastly, what is a hill that you are willing to die on?
I love this question, and I say the same answer every time. But I will die on the hill that McDonald's fountain pop is the best kind of pop on this planet. And one day I'm going to write them and tell them that they need to install a fountain pop machine in my house because the Dr. Pepper just can't be beat.
That's awesome. So good. That's really good too, since you're not a coffee or tea gal. Pop is your go-to.
Yes,
so there you go. You know what you like. That's awesome.
Yes.
Well, thank you so much for joining us this morning. It's awesome to see you living your purpose and doing something that you're so called to do. And I can attest to that because I know you. And where can people find you and how can they hire you?
Yeah. So I have a Facebook page, just Made, M-A-D-E, by Miranda. So you can search there, and I have a link to my consultation form that you can fill out.
Awesome. Sweet. Thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you so much for listening to the Angler Journey podcast. Be sure to subscribe, leave a review, and share with a friend so we can keep building people, building businesses, and building this community. If you listened to Miranda's episode today, my question for you is, what can you create that can create change for others? Miranda clearly does that through making spaces more efficient and comfortable and enjoyable for people in their lives. For you, what might that be?